Okay, Joel, looks like it's 6 o'clock. If you would read your opening statement.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon, board, staff, and members of the public. After my statement, the chairman will open this public hearing and explain the rules for this electronic meeting. Board members may text me at 540-336-3948 at any time during the meeting if you need technical support, and an IT tech will be available to assist. Members of the public wishing to speak tonight were asked to sign up in advance. The public comment period will remain open until the board acts on this item at its December 9, 2021 meeting. The public may continue to submit comments in writing to Loud and Water until that time. I now turn the meeting over to Chairman Kobliss.
Thank you, Joel. Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Kobliss, Chairman of the Loud and Water Board of Directors. I officially open this public meeting. Jonathan Rack, our legal counsel, will now read the requirements of this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to the local state of emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loud and Water Board is meeting today by electronic means as authorized by Virginia Code Section 2.23708.2A3 in the board's electronic meeting policy. Public notice and meeting access information was provided as required within the public hearing advertisement and on the Loud and Water website, as well as letters that were mailed to each of the customers. A recording of the meeting will be available at the Loud and Water website following the conclusion of the meeting. Action on today's public hearing on the rates will be taken at the December 9th, 2021 board meeting and not this evening. Reports and other public hearing information are available in the board docs website, which the public can access from the Board of Directors page on the Loud and Water website. So you just go to the Board of Directors page and look for the board docs link if you want to access all of those reports and information. During the public comment period immediately following the staff presentation, each speaker will be recognized by the chairman. And as indicated previously, each speaker will have 3 minutes to make their statement. Individuals that are calling in on the telephone as opposed to logging in on a computer will need to press *6 to unmute and speak, but we'll work through those procedures as we get into the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Jonathan. Opportunity for public comment was provided within the public hearing advertisement as required and within the meeting notice posted on the Loud and Water website. Written public comments were directed to be submitted to the board secretary, and those received to date have been provided to the board. The public comment period will remain open until the board takes formal action on the rates at its December 9th, 2021 meeting. This public hearing provides an opportunity for our members to hear your statement in advance of any formal action on the rates. If your questions are not addressed within the presentation, please submit them in writing to the board secretary and staff will prepare a response. The board secretary will now take a roll call attendance of the board members present.
Thank you, Mr. Kobliss. Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mr. Bonfils? Mr. Bonfils?
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's
Yes.
okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Byers?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Kelly? Mr. Kelly? Mr. Kobliss?
Here.
Mr. Moody is absent. Ms. Sursakar?
Here.
And Mr. Sultan? Mr. Sultan? Absent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I will now turn the meeting over to Mr. David Hyder from Stantec Consulting for a brief presentation.
All right, thank you, Chairman. I think I have control now, but I just want to make sure. Let's see.
Go ahead and double click. There we go.
Perfect. Okay. Great, thank you very much. Again, my name is Dave Heider. I'm a Stantec, and I do have a brief presentation this evening to go over the results of the water and sewer rate study and talk about the proposed water and sewer rates. And so in terms of, oops, went too far, sorry, getting the hang of it here. In terms of the overview this evening, what we're going to be talking about is I'll start with user rates. And those are the rates for residential and commercial customers for the use of the water and sewer system. And then we'll move on and talk about reclaimed water rates, which deals with commercial customers who have reclaimed water systems. And then I'll wrap up with availability charges and other fees, which are really related to development and new connections to the system. And so just starting off in terms of user rates, I want to talk a little bit about the process and background. So as part of the rate study and the evaluation, it really was a collaborative effort between the Loudoun Water Board, the Loudoun Water staff, and we served as rate consultants at Stantec. And the process we went through was completing an independent evaluation of the cost of service. And that's essentially determining what does it cost to provide water and sewer service, both today as well as into the future. So while the study portion we're talking about this evening really focuses in on the next 3 years, we do look at a longer projection period. Throughout the study, the information was shared with staff as they provided their input. And then we did have an educational rate workshop that was held with the board on September 30th of this year. Solicited input from the board at that point. And then based upon that meeting, the board did provide approval and a resolution of intent and essentially scheduled this public hearing this evening. In terms of communication, a public advertisement was published in the Loudoun Times Mirror, as well as letters were sent out to all customers informing them of the notice of intent to change the rates as well as the public hearing. The development community was notified via email and at their monthly and quarterly meetings. And then ultimately this evening, we're here to solicit feedback from all interested parties related to the proposed rates. I do want to mention, as Jonathan did, that the detailed rate study is available on the Loudoun Water website, and it provides a lot more detail than I'll be covering this evening. So in terms of the user rates, what's being proposed is a 3% increase in both the water and the sewer rates over the next 3 years. So the projection period or the adoption period we're looking at here is 22, 23, and 24. And what those 3% increases would mean to the typical customer's bill, which is a residential customer using about 21,000 gallons a quarter, that equates to about a $6.60 increase per quarter, or $2.20 per month in 2022. And then subsequently in 23 and in 24, there would be additional increases as the rates are increased. As I mentioned, we do look at a longer forecast period, so we do believe that in future years, given inflation and the increasing cost of providing service, that most likely Loudoun Water will need to continue to increase rates in the future. But again, that's evaluated at a future date. So what these 3% increases mean, there's really two components to user rates, and the first component is a fixed charge. So Loudoun Water imposes both water and sewer fixed charges, and what these are just charges that are included in the bill, regardless of water use, and they're intended really to cover the availability of service. And for residential customers, you can see the current charge is $36.74, and that's forecasted to increase by 3% over the next 3 years. All residential customers pay the same fixed charge. If you're a non-residential customer, you're charged based upon your meter size, and that scales depending upon the size of the meter. So the larger the meter, the higher the fixed charge. And it should be noted that in fiscal year 2022, based on the study, the fixed charges are being realigned with the scaling factors associated with capacity. So for some commercial customers with larger meters, they would see larger increases than just the 3% on the fixed charge. But again, for residential, it's just a 3% across the board. Similarly, there are fixed charges on the sewer side. Current fixed charge for residential customers is $36.71, and that would be going up 3% in 22, 23, and 24. And again, non-residential customers pay a sewer fixed charge based upon their meter size. So that's the fixed component of the bill. The usage component of the bill, or the charges for actual metered use, are shown here. And just a reminder in terms of how charges are applied. If you're a residential customer, there's a 3-tiered structure. So the more water you use, the more expensive it becomes as you are stepped through those tiers. And again, these are on a quarterly basis. And so the current charges are increasing by 3% in 22, 23, and 24. For commercial customers, they have a tier 1 and a tier 2 rate. Tier 1 is based upon their purchased capacity, and then if they use more than that purchased capacity, they pay the tier 2 rate. Those rates are all going up at 3%. And then finally, all customers are charged a uniform rate for sewer, and those rates are going from the 527 up to 543, again, based upon that 3%. So those are the rates. I wanted to give a little bit of an explanation in terms of why Loudon Water needs to increase rates over the next couple of years, in the next 3 years. And there's really several key drivers. The first being that the cost of operations at the water treatment plant, at the wastewater treatment plant, the cost of purchase capacity are all increasing. And that has to do with the increased cost in electricity, chemicals, material supplies, things of that nature. And so as a result, that's putting pressure in terms of keeping up with those operating costs. And therefore, to make sure we're staying aligned, our revenues and expenditures, the increases are recommended. Additionally, and having even more of an impact, is the significant capital program. So Loudon Water continues to invest in the system both to repair and replace existing assets, as well as expand the system. But I do want to mention and make it real clear that the system replacement is what's funded by user rates, and system expansion is funded by availability charges and connections to the system. But in total, just in the next 3 years, Loudon Water has about over $300 million worth of capital planned, and about 40% of that is related to system replacement. You also have increases in benefits and things of that sort that are placing pressure on the system, as well as Loudon's being proactive in funding a repair and replacement reserve, which is allowing you to have funds that are going to continue to allow you to provide for repair and replacement of the system. So a little bit more detail in terms of the revenue requirements. As I mentioned, we do look out over a 10-year period. So what we essentially do in looking at the cost of service is we take the fiscal year 22 budget and then apply escalation factors to that based upon what we've seen historically and what we are seeing coming at Loudon Water in terms of operating costs. And so you can see the assumptions that are applied here: 5% for personnel and benefits, 7% for electricity, and 3% for operating. We're also forecasting growth in the system, and we're making that's consistent with the county's projections. As I alluded to earlier, about 40% of the CIP is repair and replacement related, so taking care of assets that are reaching the end of their useful life. And then there is minimal borrowing anticipated over the projection period. So what this looks like in terms of comparisons with some surrounding jurisdictions, as I mentioned, the current typical residential bill will go up by $6.60 in 2022. And you can see how that bill compares with Prince William, Fairfax, and the town of Leesburg. So for these surrounding jurisdictions, Loudon Water remains at the bottom of the scale. So now I'm going to shift gears and talk about reclaimed water. And again, this is just for customers with reclaimed water systems. So this is commercial customers. What we're recommending, consistent with the other recommendations, is a 3% increase in reclaimed water rates. And the reason for this is because reclaimed water is linked to the cost of running the Broad Run water reclamation facility, because that is where the reclaimed water is processed. And so those 3% are consistent with cost increases that we're seeing there. What this looks like in terms of the actual rates: so the current reclaimed water rate per 1,000 gallons is $1.65, and then again applying those 3% increases, $1.70, $1.75, and $1.80 over the next 3 years. So next topic is availability charges. And I first just want to make sure everybody understands what these are. So availability charges are charges to new customers when they join the system, and they're essentially intended to make sure that the new customers pay their fair share of the additional facilities that are needed to serve them. So Loudon Water obviously builds capacity in advance of customers joining the system, and Loudon Water has a policy that growth pays for growth. So those expansion-related capital costs are paid for by availability charges. This recovers the cost of the additional treatment, transmission, distribution, and collection facilities related to providing that additional capacity. But as I mentioned earlier, these availability charges do not fund the full capital improvements program. You do have repair and replacement projects as well. So similar to the other recommendations, we're recommending 3% increases in the availability charges for both water and wastewater over the next 3 years. This is due to the increasing cost of providing those facilities. Materials and labor and things of that sort are all escalating, and we're wanting to make sure that growth continues to pay for growth. So what this looks like in terms of the availability charges, so this is for a customer with a 5/8 inch meter. The current water availability charge is $7,180, and the current wastewater availability charge is $8,711. And then you can see what those would be with the 3% increases. And we also do have just a jurisdictional comparison. So from availability charges, very similar to Prince William County Service Authority, but on the higher end of the scale here. And then you can see Loudon Water's availability charges in 2022 with a 3% increase. It's important to note that these are current availability charges for the other surrounding jurisdictions. We don't know yet what they're going to do in 2022. So there is a chance that they increase their charges as well. So the final topic is other fees. And these are really often called developer fees or ancillary fees. They were evaluated in detail in 2020 to look at the actual structure, so how the fees are charged, as well as the level of the fees. And what these fees include are plan review fees, inspection fees, connection charges, so record drawing fees, and CCTV fees, so all related to new development. The fees were updated, the structure as well as the fees themselves, and they were adopted effective January 1 of this year. And so as part of this rate study, we looked at the level of the fees. Are they still consistent with the cost of providing service? Not necessarily looking at the structure. And these fees are all intended to, or are all really based upon materials and labor. So the cost of providing the connection charges and doing the inspections and things of that sort. And we are seeing that materials and labor are both increasing due to inflation. And so we are recommending an increase in the ancillary fees effective in 2022 at 3% above what they currently are. And then again, subsequent years, we would recommend 3% increases in 23 and 24. And that would ensure that the cost of providing these development services would be recovered by the charges. So to wrap up the next steps, as was mentioned earlier, the board will consider action on these final rates at their December 9th meeting. Public comment can be provided in writing until and through that December 9th. The December 9th meeting will be held virtual, again using Teams, and it will take place at 3:30. And if the rates are approved, both for the user rates, they would be effective for all bills rendered on or after January 1st of 2022. And then similarly, if you're connecting to the system or have developer fees after January 1 of 2022, the new fees would be in place at that point as well. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. I will turn it back over to the chairman.
You're muted.
I can't believe it. What a rookie. Thank you, Mr. Hyder. We will now begin the public comment period of this hearing, wherein each speaker will have 3 minutes to make their statement. Jewel, is there some way to?
Yes, sir. Mr. Sam Wilson is signed up first, if Mr. Wilson is available. Mr. Wilson? Seeing that Mr. Wilson is not available, sir, Mr. Daniel Ganaratam is next. I apologize if I mispronounced your name, sir.
No, you did a good job.
Thank you.
I just have 4 comments. In the assumption of sewer rates, the sewer flows into it should be from November to February. According to your memo, it is from February to April. But in my bill, I see all sewer rates, I assume from the flows into my house, water supply from November to February. And that is the correct rates of flow charges. The other thing is you're charging 100% of water supply flow from the winter rates for the sewer rates. I think it cannot be 100% that is used inside the house that subtracts from that sewer flow. And there's also leakages into the house. So I would say about 90% or whatever the efficiency that you can see by measuring actual sewer flows. The other thing I was interested was the look at what do you call it, the long-term look. I see the O&M charges dramatically increase from 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. I think with these 3% charges, you could meet quite easily up to 24. But I think this dramatic increase seems to be the expansion of the network. And so I think that you should either have a 2-part tariff. You're saying that you do charge them for capital increases, but you're not charging for O&M increases. I think there should be some way in which they bear the charges of O&M increases. The last thing I want to say is the question of the efficiency in the system. No mention is made about the efficiency improvements, except that you say that you repair and replace. What percentage of water do you lose in the system? The network system, the metering efficiencies, and also other losses that can occur in the system. Is it 5%? Is it 7%, 8%? We would like to know this because that will help us to keep the water rates to the same level. Thank you very much. I've given a written comment already, so you should read the written comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe most of the board members have read your statement that you sent, and I appreciate it. Very detailed. Thank you. So I believe that is our only speaker, Jewel. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. After checking the attendees, we do not see anyone else that is signed up to speak.
So Mr. Wilson is not doesn't show up.
He does not show up, sir.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Loudoun Water Board, we thank you for your participation in this evening's public hearing. Again, we encourage all customers to submit any additional questions or comments to the board secretary, Jewel Lilly, and her email address is jlilly@loudounwater.org.
Thank you.
And please submit these prior to the December 9th meeting. I just want to thank everybody that put this presentation together and all the effort by Stantec and Loudoun Water staff. I know this is not a simple task, and we as the board really appreciate all the hard work put into this. Can I get a motion? Oh, and I didn't want to leave out our legal counsel, Jonathan Rack, either. So can I get a motion from one of the board members to adjourn this public hearing?
So moved. This is Bill.
Bill, and a second?
I'll second it. This is Brent.
Okay, any comments? All right, Jewel, if you could take a roll call.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly, Mr. Koblis,
Yes.
Mr. Moody, Ms. Sursakar,
Yes.
Mr. Sultan. Thank you. Meeting adjourned at 6:25 p.m.
Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving and please be safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thanks,
You as
everyone.
well.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. See ya.